Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Couch GMs podcast on Friday, October 1st, 2021. Can you just feel fall in that spooky season coming in, guys?
Oh, man. Spooky season is the best season. Actually, it's just good because it's now October, and my birthday's in October, and October is the best month.
And that's Cody Roadcap with us, and we also got Tyler Snyder. Tyler, how you doing?
I'm all right. Titans won last week, so I'm good to go.
It's nice to have you back with us here as well. And we're going to talk some Week 4 fantasy outlook this week, and we're going to give you some news and notes that we may have missed since our show on Tuesday. Don't forget to find us on thecouchgms.com, where Cody will help you set your lineup with his starts and sits of the week. You can also check out some waiver wires, see if anybody kind of snuck through in your league that should be added. But why don't we jump into some NFL news right here? And there's not a lot going on because we did cover a lot of it on Tuesday. But I think the first big news, the Buccaneers all-star team got even bigger as Richard Sherman, who is now healthy from his injury, signs with the Buccaneers. And I guess his feud with Tom Brady is over, don't you think?
It appears that way. And it was reported that Tom Brady reached out to Richard Sherman to get him to Tampa Bay. It's a great ad for the defense that has had a few injuries in the secondary. Definitely, I know Tyler's probably not going to even talk during this segment because he can't stand Richard Sherman. But he's not the corner he once was, but he's still a solid corner. Even PFF had him rated pretty highly the last time he was on the football field. And it'll be pretty cool to see him rocking number 5, single digits for Richard Sherman.
Not pretty
Just
cool.
the eye
honestly.
roll there, I'm assuming
hate
it's for the single digits. Yeah.
It's for the single digits. I mean, Richard Sherman's already past his prime, so nobody's talking about him being the best corner in the game anymore, so I don't really have to hear those arguments anymore. Is he a serviceable depth corner? Sure. I don't care. I won't argue about that. But no, I'm still not a fan of the single digit numbers. It's just stupid to me to see number 3 is covering number 4 on the outside. It's just dumb. I hate every bit of it. A linebacker with number 6 getting a tackle, it's just don't like it.
I mean, I'll admit it makes it a little bit harder to tell what position group the person's from, but I'm sure 10 years down the road, we're going to look at it completely different because it's going to be so ingrained in our heads that it's going to be seem like normal. I don't know. I'm still torn on the whole thing, but I think onto other news here. Go ahead.
Just wait. They're going to have Roman numerals next. We're going to have linebacker wearing 1V in the backfield. It's coming.
Or emojis. So millennial. Poop emoji down the sideline. It's going to be so bad.
And he's tackled by number 69.
Nice.
All right, anyway. Running back LaShawn McCoy is set to sign a one-day contract with the Philadelphia Eagles to retire as an Eagle on Friday. The man has the most rushing yards in Eagles history, went on to Buffalo to have a couple more successful years, and then ended up winning 2 Super Bowls. So it's nice to see someone with success go out in his own terms, I would say.
The man has also done nothing but talk smack on the Eagles since he left the Eagles, so it's really funny to me that he wants to retire as one.
I don't think the Chip Kelly feud helped a lot of anything.
But the big question is, George, are you going to cry during his press conference on Friday?
Maybe not cry, but it's going to be nice to hopefully hear him say good things about the Eagles again. I missed that.
All right,
we'll
George.
See. He might still have some low blows towards Chip Kelly in the speech, but guys, some
Chip Kelly isn't an Eagle.
News. Some somewhat football news, but not quite football news. We do have the Super Bowl halftime show. It is not just going to be one band or one artist. It's actually going to be 5 big-name artists. We got Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, Mary J. Blige, and Kendrick Lamar performing the halftime show this year. What's your thoughts, guys?
On the surface, it looks like a really good lineup. Hopefully, they're going to come out and they're going to perform. It's going to be interesting. Last year's show I enjoyed it, but it was different. I know the Weeknd put a lot of their own, effort and money into making it a huge spectacular. These 5 on the stage, I think they each can hold themselves well. They're going to own it. It should be a fun, and most importantly, entertaining halftime show. And they're all still relevant. I know a lot of times I feel like the halftime show is like people on their way out. And yeah, maybe, Snoop Dogg has been around for a while, but he's still very much a part of that music genre. It's going to be a fun show, in my personal opinion.
No, I mean, I think it's interesting that they went with basically 5 headliners instead of the one headliner who they normally tend to invite other artists to perform with them. I'm interested to see how they're going to split it. I mean, there's probably going to be a lot of change in pace and stuff throughout the whole thing, trying to get all 5 of them their piece. But I think it's going to be interesting. It should be a good show.
Yeah, and it's not. I know, Cody, you said that all 5 of them can hold their own, so having 5 up there is great, but you also got to ask, like, how good are the 5 of them going to be together? Like, how are they going to mix it up? Because it's not like they're just going to sing as a group. That's not what these what these artists do. So how they mesh the show to be able to get all 5 of them the same kind of screen time, but make it all flow and make it all work is going to be interesting. I mean, I know Dr. Dre and Eminem have plenty of songs in the past together, so the 2 of them should be fine. It's wondering how the rest of them get together. But honestly, look, I'm excited for the show, but I'm not super excited about the lineup. Not because I don't want to see these guys perform, but because I'm not ready for the old people after the halftime show saying it was the worst one ever and I couldn't stand it. I couldn't watch a second of it. I'm not ready for it. I'm not ready for that part. And it's happening.
Yeah, it's going to happen until they get somebody from like the 70s or 80s back on the stage again, which I'm sure they're going to do at some point, but it's been a while.
Yeah, if you're in a room with a little bit older generation, no offense to any older people listening there, we appreciate you for listening. But don't turn into a drinking game to every time someone of that generation goes, what is he even saying? What are they saying? Because it's going to happen. They're going to ask. They're like, I can't even understand him. We all know Eminem is going to, I'm going to have a hard time understanding Eminem. But that's just part of his music. It sounds great. He's a performer. And I'm not going to ask, what is he saying? I'll figure it out. But the older people, no offense. I feel so rude just like bashing them right now. But yeah, that's definitely going to happen.
Well, there you have it. We're excited for the They Call This Music halftime show. I'm looking forward to it, but you know what? Let's go ahead and move on to George's favorite segment. We got the honorary quote of the week. George, go ahead and hit us with your quote.
Now, I mean, I know we did this segment earlier in the week. We normally try to do it once a week. I had to add this in because it's just way too good to ignore. Jalen Hurts, after the loss on Monday Night Football, was quoted saying, you take a deuce, you don't sit there and look at it, you flush it and move on. We're going to flush it and move on. I don't have anything else to say. Just, yep.
I mean, sometimes you got to look at it. It's.
I was going to say, sometimes you look at it, though.
Sometimes you got to look at it.
You got to make sure there's I'm not going to, nope. Let's just stop. I'm not going to go into like a whole breakdown of what you're looking for. Nope. I think if we're going to break down anything, we should probably break down the games with our Week 4 fantasy outlook.
All right, I guess I'll start off our Week 4 fantasy outlook because it's a game that I am not just going to be watching, but I will be attending. I'm going to this game this weekend, guys. I'm going to go to the Tennessee Titans at the New York Jets. I bought these tickets so long ago, and now the rumor is that both Julio and AJ are going to be out for this game. So my 2 big wide receivers that I'm so excited to see, not going to see them in person. Little disappointed, but the question is, can the Titans still pull off the win, even without AJ and Julio? But the bigger question is, who benefits and who hurts in fantasy? So normally you would think with those 2 receivers out, it's going to be a lot more Derrick Henry. Well, first off, I don't know how you get a lot more Derrick Henry because the whole game is Derrick Henry already to begin with. But I think the issue is going to be with AJ and Julio out, unless another receiver can step up and really take charge. I think the defense is going to be playing 8-9 men in the box, just trying to stop Henry. All men on Henry and try to stop the run game. So somebody's going to have to step up. If you are wondering who that might be, you can look at Chester Rogers. It's not a great name, but he has been heavily involved in this passing attack. He had a touchdown last week. He's honestly, Josh Reynolds was the guy that was signed to be our number 3 wide receiver this year, and he was a healthy scratch last week because they liked Chester Rogers that much. The other guy to look at is Nick Westbrook Akina. Again, another name you're not going to love, but he was heavily used last week, performed really well. And guys, the Jets are a bad team. Titans have that passing attack. They're going to throw the ball. I'm not saying pick them up and start them in a redraft league, but if you're playing some daily fantasy, feel free to look at Chester Rogers and Nick Westbrook Akina. Real cheap. They could end up winning your matchup. On the other side of the ball, we got the New York Jets. Guys, is there any Jets that you actually want to start in this matchup, even though the Titans defense isn't that spectacular?
If I was desperate, I would consider Corey Davis, but that's pretty much the only offensive weapon. There's too much mud in that backfield. Zach Wilson, he's showing too much inconsistency. So I would consider Corey Davis. Maybe he wants, to put an emphasis on getting the end zone against his former team. There could be some of that, heightened attitude for him out there. But yeah, I agree with you. New York Jets wise, and it's probably going to be most of the season, there's not really anyone worth starting. Their offense just isn't that good. I do want to talk about the Titans, though, because I saw a fun stat about Derrick Henry, and he has 19 more touches than this number 2 running back of all running backs. He literally has a game or more touches than the number 2 running back. That's how utilized he is. Through 3 games, he has 19 more touches than the second closest running back. Crazy. That's not going to change this week.
The crazy thing to me is people use that as a negative against Henry. And Cody, you even kind of had a clap back at me the other day when I was making an Aaron Jones comment about, well, maybe if he had as many carries as Henry, he would have more. It's definitely heavily weighted on Henry that he gets utilized so much. So are his rushing yards and rushing touchdowns and fantasy points really that impressive because he gets used that much? Yeah. What other running back has been this utilized for years and has still maintained this level of a fantasy output? I mean, really, a lot of running backs that you see get this level of volume in the past, guys like Christian McCaffrey, are getting hurt on a regular basis, and it's just they aren't able to maintain that, and they need that second guy in there to help spell them out, give them a breather, help them out a little bit. Derrick Henry is just give me more. I'm ready for it. So I think it's actually more impressive personally.
I agree with you. The only way Derrick Henry is being used as a negative in fantasy is if you have a league that somehow calculates yards per carry, because he can average 3 yards per carry in the first half when he's not just getting going. And then when he gets to the second half and he wears him down, then he brings up his yards per carry. But it's a little lower than some of those more boom running backs who get 15 carries and maybe get similar yardage just because of the way that he's made. But you're talking about other running backs that get all that workload and just don't stay healthy. I think this might be a good segue to move on to another game where we can talk about Dalvin Cook, someone who is also a running back that gets heavily used, and he missed last week. He did return to practice limited today, but we don't know for sure if he's going to play. I think it's leaning that he will, but he's facing a tough Browns defense as well. Are you worried at all? I know he's a first-round running back. If he's starting, you're probably putting him in, but are you worried about a little bit of a down week at all?
I think you have to pay attention to the reports coming out of camp, or not camp, or for past camp, out of practice. He said earlier this week, if he wakes up Sunday and he feels good enough to play, he's going to play. If he wakes up Sunday and he feels like he can't go out there and give it his all, he's not going to play. So if Dalvin Cook is out there on Sunday, I expect them to use him, rely on him, heavily utilized. I know Alexander Mattison looked great in relief for him, but if Dalvin Cook is out there, I would have no hesitations playing Dalvin Cook, because he himself said he's not going to go out there at 50%. He either wants to be 100% or he's not going to put his half injured self or half his effort into the team. He feels like it's better if someone else takes over at that point. So for the Vikings, Dalvin Cook, you're going to play if he's healthy. If not, I'd start Mattson again. He proved that he definitely gets the outlook or the volume when Cook is not there. What about my biggest question for the Vikings, though, and I'll let you guys answer it, is either the third pass catching option. Would you roll with Tyler Conklin this week, or are you going to roll out KJ Osborne? Or, the Browns defense is pretty good. Are we going to, scrap the third pass catching option, I should say?
Look, if it was up to me, I would be stashing the third pass catching option on my bench, whether it be KJ Osborne or Tyler Conklin. I like Osborne a little bit better long term, but I'm stashing them. If Jefferson or Thielen go down, I'm starting these guys because they're going to get the volume and they have the talent to do it. But if I'm in a redraft league, I'm not touching them. I'd like to think that there's a different pass catcher out there that you can believe in a little bit more. Even if it's someone along the lines of a Henry Ruggs or a Hunter Renfrow. I know I went 2 Raiders there, which is really weird for me, but guys like that have been stepping up in recent weeks, and I could see them being utilized more. And honestly, there's teams out there that have plenty of receivers. If you're that desperate for a receiver that you're looking at a Vikings number 3, why not go make a trade? There's so many people that still are not starting Marvin Jones despite being solid every single week because it's Marvin Jones. Do we really trust him? Go get a guy like that. Go get a guy like Mike Williams. Same boat. Awesome every week, but people still aren't trusting him because it's Mike Williams. I mean, I would make a move. I would not start a number 3 especially against this Browns defense.
Definitely agree with that. I would think about stashing them in a deeper league or a dynasty for sure, but I'm not touching them this week unless you're super desperate at tight end. But I think Cody's probably going to find a way to come out with better ideas for tight end salvages that are a little better than Tyler Conklin. We'll see as we go through the show and break down some more games. Why don't we move on to the Kansas City Chiefs at the Philadelphia Eagles? We dropped a deuce on Monday, and Jalen Hurts still proved to be a solid fantasy quarterback, putting up a decent score. So I think this all comes back to, do you trust him again against Kansas City?
I mean, you can trust Jalen Hurts. I mean, he didn't look good at all. Like they were in garbage time, like 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and that's when he finally got some points. Nick Sirianni, if you want to keep your job, I understand it's a pass-first offense, but 2 carries for Miles Sanders, dude, like you got to improve that. I would put Miles Sanders back in my lineup. I think I know I wrote the article. He is one of the starts I mentioned this week because he was productive, even though it was 2 carries. The Chiefs are bottom tier against the run for fantasy running backs. Miles Sanders should have a good outlook this week. We expect the Chiefs to put up a lot of points. We think. I know they struggled last week against the Chargers, but that's divisional. 1:00 game. Again, hopefully Mahomes bounces back. Yeah, Eagles-wise, Hurts, Miles Sanders, they're definitely in your lineup. Smith is even worth flexible, and then the guys you're starting for Kansas City.
And that does not include Josh Gordon. Please stop adding Josh Gordon.
Yeah, I mean, you can add Josh Gordon if you really want.
He might come out and have one good game, but that's about all he's going to get.
There's just some ridiculous things I'm seeing on Twitter and Facebook of people like, should I drop this solid bench piece for Josh Gordon? I don't think anything's going to come of Josh Gordon.
And if we're wrong, sometimes we're wrong, and that one's okay to be wrong on because we have nothing. There's no positive. I mean, he was decent. He ended up being a solid option near the end before he found himself out of the league again on Seattle. Like he had some fantasy value there, but even Andy Reid said, yeah, it's going to be a while till he's up to speed and ready. Like he's on the practice squad. There's no need to get him now. That you're not the clever fantasy player by holding on to Josh Gordon for 4 or 5 weeks before he even starts to see the field. So George is right. Don't pick up Josh Gordon.
Yeah. Moving on to a game that I think is actually really interesting here, guys, because, picking the winner here could go either way. And that's the Carolina Panthers and the Dallas Cowboys. I honestly think the Panthers are really impressing with the way they're playing. I don't think that they're just playing weaker opponents, like you could argue with the Broncos. I think that they're actually playing some strong football. I think that Sam Darnold looks like the Sam Darnold he was supposed to be when he got drafted. And maybe it really was just the Adam Gase effect. And then on the other side, the Dallas Cowboys, look, the Eagles looked awesome in week 1, and they got obliterated in week 3 against the Cowboys. And the Cowboys offense looks strong. I mean, you look at Michael Gallup goes down. You look at they had 3 big receivers. Michael Gallup goes down. Amari Cooper is limited and isn't heavily used. So you think, oh, maybe that offense is going to be weaker. Then here comes Cedric Wilson making unbelievable toe tap catches and catches on his back. I don't care if that catch counted or not. Like, Cedric Wilson looks really good. The Cowboys just seem to find pieces anywhere they can. They're both strong teams right now that I think are underrated in the preseason and on the rise. So I think there's a whole mess of potential fantasy players in this game. You guys agree? And if so, who do you think some of them are?
I agree, and I'll go ahead and try to jump a tight end that I think might be more effective than Tyler Conklin, and that's Tommy Tremble. I know, bold, but Dallas, even though they looked really good against Philly last week, Dallas Goedert got his space against the Cowboys defense. Maybe their defense is not the strongest against the tight end. Carolina even got Tremble a rushing attempt last week, and I believe that was how he got his touchdown. It seems like they're trying to get him involved in the offense, and they called him this year's Jeremy Chin. Might be a good time to add him and throw a dart throw if you don't have a tight end.
Coming from the big Dan Arnold fan.
Dan Arnold got traded, man.
I know.
He literally stole my line from the Tuesday show.
He did. I did. Yep.
I think we have a little beef right now. Like, literally.
I mean, we're gonna duke it out between Henry Ruggs and Hunter Renfrow later, so I'm just starting up the.
No, but it's all good. I agree. Tommy Tremble is an interesting ad this week. I will put the little caveat that I even put when we did Kyle Pitts. Rookie tight ends are traditionally not very good. So I know there's a lot of hype around him right now. I mean, Kyle Pitts is at least, averaging 6 fantasy points a week, which is pretty good for tight ends. If you're not like in the big 4, like he's at least doing solid work. So maybe Tommy Tremble can get to, 6 to 10 average points, and that'd be a huge win for a guy you pick up in week 4. We talked about Chuba Hubbard on Tuesday. He's starting in place of Christian McCaffrey. You should feel pretty confident with that one. But honestly, the guy, I know he had 2 touchdowns last week, but Dalton Schultz, he's a guy I am actually fading away from this week. I am not looking to start him. I would start Tyler Conklin over him. You could probably talk me into Tommy Tremble just because of the upside over Dalton Schultz. But this Carolina Panthers defense, they have McCaffrey, the revival of Sam Darnold, but their defense is what is carrying this team at the moment. They're only giving up an average of 146 passing yards a game and 45 yards on the ground. So it's going to be a great matchup to see if they can stop this potent Cowboys attack. Like Tyler mentioned, this is honestly probably my favorite 1:00 game, and I hate the Cowboys. But just this offense versus the defense, is a game that I'll be tuned into all day on Sunday.
And I just got to throw a little shout out in there. In our league of record, I went into the day needing Zeke to outscore 2 different skill players by more than 6, and he did. So I have a little bit of Cowboys fan in me this year. I don't know where it came from. You both hate it, and it's continuing with Zeke this week. I loved it. It got me my first win. I'm on the board. So thank you, Zeke. Let's keep it going this week.
And speaking of Zeke,
you're also.
I was going to say, speaking of Zeke, Tony Pollard did miss practice on Thursday. So keep that in the back of your mind. I know he was like a viable flex option. He had a few drives, but then Zeke took over because Zeke was eaten against the Eagles. And if Tony Pollard continues to miss practice, look for even bigger output from Zeke. Hopefully it wasn't a 1-game flash game from Zeke, but he looked good, and he looked the most explosive I've seen him in years against the Eagles. Sorry, George. I know that was tough to watch, but
no, it was tough to watch. But I mean, I think hopefully it wasn't just the emotion of playing the Eagles, because you know how Eagles Cowboys goes. But if he's actually fully back healthy and in the zone,
but he's not the only one, guys. I mean, if we're going to talk about my running backs that finally came alive, Zeke's not the only one. I did have another one, and that was Saquon Barkley. My God, I was starting to think I was going to have to bench this guy, even though I took him in the first round, first pick in the second round. But he finally came alive. He finally put on some points last week. Finally got some running room. I don't know if it was the offensive line finally stepped up or if it was really they were just playing a bad team. But this week is not going to be any. This week's not going to be any easier because now they're playing the Saints. The Saints have the number 1 ranked fantasy defense right now. Their defense has looked pretty strong. This might be a week you want to fade away from some of those Giants players you've liked. With Sterling Shepard down, I do like Kenny Golladay more, but I still don't like him enough to start him, I don't think.
Sleeper this week is probably Kadarius Toney because Joe Judge has said he wants to get Toney more involved in the offense, and you said they're missing Shepard, and it seems like they're going to be missing Darius Slayton as well. Wouldn't start Toney, but he may be somebody, if you have the extra bench spot, you might want to try to jump waivers next week. I feel like he could be a guy that sneaks into waivers next week.
Yeah, this is also the second game back for Evan Ingram, and if you're like majority of the fantasy owners out there that's playing tight end fantasy darts, you might want to throw your dart towards Evan Ingram this week. It can't be much worse. Let's just put it that way. So
I feel like I'm going to be spending my time the next few days making a fake dartboard with Cody's face on it, just throwing tight end darts.
Why is my face on it? Why wouldn't it be tight end faces? You just want to throw darts at my face. You're stealing my lines, and now you want to throw darts at my face. Tyler, you want to do the show without George next week?
Hey, I'm down. I've been trying to get George off this podcast for weeks. It's just I don't show up to every podcast, so it's kind of hard to kick him off if I'm not here.
Love you too, guys. Love you too.
Look, let's go ahead and jump forward to, we talked about one of the best games of the week. Let's go to one of the worst games of the week. We have the Detroit Lions and the Chicago Bears. My God, this is not a good game. This is not a game I plan to tune into. DeAndre Swift is questionable. Andy Dalton came back to practice. The Bears said Andy Dalton, Justin Fields, and Nick Foles are all up in the air to start this game. The fact that Nick Foles' name was even being thrown out there just shows how bad the Bears are getting at this point. And guys, we can talk about some of the Lions in this matchup. We can talk about some of the Bears. I think if you have David Montgomery, you're obviously still starting him. But the guy that I'm really disappointed in this year, because I had such high hopes in him and he was one of my fantasy loves, is Allen Robinson. And it's kind of hard for Allen Robinson to get any points when the when the whole team's getting like 60 yards of offense in the game. It's hard for Robinson to eat. But
yeah.
But look, I thought when Justin Fields took over, Allen Robinson was going to be one of the top receivers in the league. He was going to be the guy. Go out and get him everywhere. Justin Fields took over, and this team just didn't do anything. And it was painful to watch. And I don't know. I mean, if you have Allen Robinson, are you trying to sell him for whatever value he still has left? Or are you a non-Allen Robinson owner that's maybe trying to go steal him while he's super cheap? Which end are you guys on?
For me, if I could, because of how low he is, there is potential for me to go out there and try to make a move for a guy like Allen Robinson. Now, it's not going to be not a guy that I'm going absolutely telling you to go trade for, but maybe we'll talk about it a little bit. But how bad, the Steelers' offense is just as bad. They had some three guys drafted pretty high: Juju Smith-Schuster, Chase Claypool. If I could flip them for Allen Robinson. They're outscoring him at the moment, but that's a potential there. One of the three guys in Cincinnati, Jamar Chase is at a hot name right now, but his pace, he's scoring on 30-some% of his catches, like that. He's going to slow down a little bit. He's a name. I'm not saying I would flip Jamar Chase for Allen Robinson at this moment, but that's another guy you should maybe be out there trying to sell high on. So just, some of those guys, those crowded back rooms or wide receiver rooms, you might want to look to move those pieces and go for a guy in Allen Robinson, because hopefully Justin Fields comes around, or, Allen Robinson put up, wide receiver 1 points with Nick Foles last year. Andy Dalton comes back, he's at least competent. Like, this team isn't going to put up 47 yards every week. So if you could buy low on a guy that has breakout potential in the second half, it's not a terrible idea.
Well, like, the only thing that concerns me is if Andy Dalton comes back, I feel like he's not going to be 100%. Like, it hasn't been long enough. Justin Fields looked bad. He's not going to look that bad. I find it hard to believe he would look that bad again. But I feel the most confident in Allen Robinson short term if Nick Foles is the starting quarterback. And that is something I never thought I would say.
Says the guy with 2 Eagles banners behind him. Yeah.
You know how much I was batting for Mitch Trubisky like you guys last year.
Mm-hmm. I need to see the proof.
Guys,
I'll go find it.
I don't have a lot to say about this game, but George, you were talking about a quarterback that might come out and just look bad because he is injured, and that makes me want to move on to the next game because I have never seen a good quarterback look so bad because he's injured until I saw Carson Wentz against the Titans last week. My God, he reminded me. So George and I even talked about it during the game. We watched the game together, and I don't know if the fans out there will remember this, but Sam Bradford, when he went to the Eagles, had some major injuries after major injuries after major injuries, and it was his final season playing or his second to last season playing. He had so many injuries in a row that it got to the point where if there was any pressure on him at all, he would just curl up and just throw the ball away so he wouldn't get hit. And I hate to say it, but that's what I saw out of Carson Wentz. It was bad. Every time even the slightest bit of pressure got put on Wentz last week, he just threw the ball away. He would just chuck it into the ground. He had so many intentional grounding, so many just throwaways. It was a horrible game, and the Colts might be on a huge downswing here, guys.
Yeah, the Colts are off to a slow start. Fortunately for them, they're in a pretty rough division. They could, outside of the Titans, I'm not putting the Titans in the same level as the Houston Texans and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Tenders don't attack me.
Thank you.
So they have potential to get back into a wild card berth. And actually, Jonathan Taylor is one of my favorite trade for targets at the moment because he has not been as productive as we had hoped. But he is seeing a huge number of red zone targets, or red zone carries, I should say. He's seen a few targets too, but carries, they're just not converting into touchdowns. They will eventually come. He is still a solid option. He's a guy, running backs are becoming less and less weekly reliant unless you have Derrick Henry because the dude carries the ball so many times, which is an impressive feat in itself. I don't disagree with that. But Jonathan Taylor, definitely a guy I like to trade for, and you might even want to wait till after this week because I do like the Miami Dolphins defense. But after this week, his schedule gets easier. But speaking of easy schedules, the Miami Dolphins have the second easiest schedule based on current teams' win rates, percentages, and stuff like that. So you can put as much emphasis on that as you want to. They have the second easiest schedule going forward. Jacobi Brissett's still there. Will Fuller, he's a guy, he was back last week, saw 6 targets, got a couple deep shots. Once that connection gets going, I look for him to be a solid fantasy option. Myles Gaskin is coming. I'm not ready to give up on the Myles Gaskin hype from the beginning of the season. He's going to break out here soon. I can feel it.
I was trying to look back here to see where the Sam Bradford thing is. If any of you fans want to see how Sam Bradford looked, it's the 2018 Arizona Cardinals. He played 3 games. I believe it was week 3. He finally got benched. It was bad.
Yeah, and like I said, it was just anytime there was any kind of pressure put on him, he would throw it into the ground, and that's exactly what I saw out of Wentz. Now, maybe Wentz will start to feel more comfortable once his ankles start to heal up. But maybe not. Maybe he really is just that afraid. He was so tired of getting called injury prone and so tired of all that maybe he really is just afraid to get hit because he knows one more injury that could be the last time he starts this season. But either way, looking at fantasy, how does this affect you? One, don't start Carson Wentz in fantasy, but I don't think many people were at this point. But it's the Colts receivers. We always try to look in the beginning of the year, which Colts receiver is going to be the guy to look at. And every year it's a struggle because they don't really have much. T.Y. Hilton's been on a downswing. Michael Pittman was our guy that we were like, oh, you got to look at Pittman. He's still the guy, but he hasn't done anything. We have Zach Pascal. But really at this point, I don't like any of the receivers, and I'm not starting a Colts receiver in fantasy unless I really have to. You might be able to get some value out there, but with your quarterback looking that bad and just throwing it away, and there was plenty of times where receivers were wide open, but Wentz was so afraid of getting hit, he just threw it into the dirt just to avoid the hit. Those receivers ended up with nothing. So until I see improvement out of Wentz, I'm not starting a Colts receiver right now.
Let me say, I'm not confident in starting Michael Pittman, but the man who's seeing the most volume is Pittman. He got 12 targets last week. Obviously, he's not going to turn a lot of those into catches with Wentz kind of just throwing the ball up there, but he converted 50% last week. He got 6 catches. He got 10 points and a half PPR. It's decent. If you're going to start anybody, Pittman still has some value, but I don't love it.
Yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing. He's seen 12 targets, like George mentioned, last week, and in week 2, he has gone over 10 points and half point PPR twice now. He seems to be the guy. It's not, a great option, but sometimes bye weeks are coming starting next week. Like Pittman has some value. Hopefully, you can get through without playing him this week, but don't by any means go out and cut him. And as he progresses with Carson Wentz, hopefully they get back. He could be a solid option for down the stretch. But I'm sure you guys are tired of us talking about the Colts and the Dolphins. We spent a lot of time on that game. I think we still have to hit the Houston Texans or at the Buffalo Bills. And are the Buffalo Bills going to score 35 points or more for the 3rd week in a row?
Man, do I hope so. Because I'm going to say start pretty much everybody except for maybe Gabriel Davis.
Man, we were so high on Gabriel Davis in the beginning of the year. You're just giving up on him now?
I mean, Emmanuel Sanders seems to have taken over the number 3 role, and Cole Beasley's jumping right back into that Mr. Reliable 10 to 12 targets a game kind of thing. I wish Gabriel Davis would get the look, but Emmanuel Sanders seems to have jumped right into his spot.
Yeah, I think we all underestimated how well Emmanuel Sanders was going to look to start the season.
But I'm glad to see it, honestly. I've been a big Emmanuel Sanders fan since he was on the Steelers. It's hard to even remember that he was on the Steelers, but I've been a big fan of him since then. He's been such an exciting receiver. I hated seeing his career go down like that. I'm glad to see him back. I mean, good for him, honestly. And I think he found the right fit with the Buffalo Bills right now.
Definitely, because he doesn't have to go out there and be the number 1 receiver, but he's putting up big plays like he always has. I guess I should throw a caveat in. I don't know if I trust the Bills' backfield quite enough yet, but the guy who's popping out on top is Zach Moss. So if you need a desperate running back play, it's Moss.
Yeah, they're both so split. It's like, which guy's going to get the touchdown this week? It's another dart throw, but if you have to do it, you have to do it. Houston Texans side, I mentioned it, Brandon Cooks. He's pretty much the only guy you're starting. I'm sure you're like, do I really want to start Brandon Cooks? No, you don't, but he has been solid. He's seen over 10 targets in every game. He had 16.7 fantasy points and half point PPR, and he only scored 1 touchdown this season, and he's a top 5 wide receiver. So he's putting up the numbers, and if you checked out the article, you probably already know this, but I forgot to tell the guys that I actually did it, so I don't even know if they saw it. I saw a fun stat about Brandon Cooks. 1, he turns 28 on Saturday. Who thought he was older?
Yeah, me.
Been around for a long time.
Yeah, and he only turns 28. But running backs are not wide receivers, before they're 28, before they turn 28. So at that point in their career, he has more receptions than Calvin Johnson. He has more receiving yards than Antonio Brown and has a higher yards per target than Randy Moss. I don't think we respect on how good Brandon Cooks has been. And it doesn't help that he's on the Houston Texans right now.
Well, it's not just the Houston Texans.
Yeah, I think
we're going to say the same thing. Go.
He's been cut from so many teams and traded, and he can't stay on one team. He's this good, and we're supposed to respect him in fantasy. But how can we respect him in fantasy when he's not respected in the NFL? I just threw something.
Exactly. He's been traded 3 or 4 times in his career for no reason. I knew you were going the same way when you said it that way.
It's frustrating. Look,
Yeah, 4
guys,
teams. I think it's 4. It may be 5, but 4 teams before you turn 28, and you're productive everywhere you go. And he's still productive with a bad offense. So Brandon Cooks, he's a solid, wide receiver 2 flex option.
mad respect, Brandon Cooks. Guys, there's one more guy I want to talk about. If we can go back to the Bills side, there was big waiver wire ads for 2 tight ends this week. The first one was Dalton Schultz. Cody, you already gave your feedback on him, saying you're trying to fade away. But how are we feeling about Dawson Knox? Now, I understand already there's people out there that are going to start Dawson Knox because the tight end market is that bad and just need to start anybody. But let's say you have a mid-level let's say you have a mid-level tight end. How confident are you feeling in Dawson Knox moving forward?
Right now, he's in my starting lineup of my options of Dawson Knox, Tyler Conklin, and Evan Ingram. I'd probably start him over Austin Hooper, which I think is available. Yeah, I've been ravished in that league, our league of record with tight ends. So now, like if I compared him in the article, like if I have Logan Thomas, who has been solid, hasn't been great, but I'm not rushing to put a guy like Dawson Knox over Logan Thomas. Like I know he's a hot waiver name, but keep rolling with Logan Thomas, keep rolling with Kyle Pitts, keep rolling with TJ Hawkinson, and I'm not going to go on to the guys above them, the Mark Andrews, Darren Wallers, like don't cut them. Noah Fant.
I'm not going to go.
But after
I'm not going to go above them and then names 3 more.
Sorry, I had to. I left off Travis Kelce. Well, I just named him anyway, so I named them all.
Kittle.
But after
Kittle.
those guys, yeah, George Kittle too. Good point. But after those guys, really, like I said, it's the dartboard that George wants to make with my face on it instead of Dawson Knox and the other ones that might help you pick the guy. But it's a great matchup. You expect them to put up 30 plus points again. He's going to see some action. It's Houston Texans aren't that very good. Like Dawson Knox, one of my favorite streamers this week of all the mid-tier average, probably only going to get 5 fantasy point tight ends.
All right,
Tyler, go ahead. I'm still messed up from this.
I'm trying to think of a segue. The only one I could think of is Cody. You said you would not start him over Logan Thomas, so let's go ahead to Logan Thomas's team, which is our next matchup. We got the Washington football team at the Atlanta Falcons. Guys, if you hate our segues, feel free to roast me because I'm running out of ideas here. So, Washington football team, Atlanta Falcons. Look, last week a lot of people were benching Antonio Gibson against that tough Buffalo Bills defense, and he made them regret it. He put up 16, 17 points in a half-point PPR. So Antonio Gibson against a weak team like the Atlanta Falcons, he is questionable right now, so you need to watch the injury report or keep an eye on our social media feed. We'll update you, but look, if he's healthy, you're starting Antonio Gibson. That's a definite. And Terry McLaurin had a down week last week, but if you got McLaurin, you're starting him this week. There's no doubt about that. Heck, guys, Taylor Heineke is turning into a fantasy starter at quarterback. He has been solid since he took over. He was even playable in week 1 when he only took over halfway through the game because of the points he put up. He's one of the top scoring quarterbacks in the league so far this year already. And against a bad team like the Falcons, I'm not afraid to roll with the Heine. I'm going Taylor Heineke. But outside of those 3, you have Logan Thomas. Calvin Ridley's been down. Do you want to start him? Kyle Pitts has been down. Do you want to start him? Or how confident are we feeling in Mike Davis? He's been a disappointment this year. Is there any Atlanta Falcons that you guys are starting?
Well, I'm starting Kyle Pitts because he was in my tight ends that I listed that I would start. And you drafted him to start him. And he's at least putting up decent fantasy numbers. Mike Davis, not a huge fan of Mike Davis. He's seeing volume, but he's just not doing much with it. George, I was saving it for you. See, I was going to let you talk about your guy.
Okay.
I know Calvin Ridley is a hot name. Like everyone's expecting him to have his first 100-yard receiving game this week. So if you're one of those guys, definitely start Calvin Ridley. But I'll let George talk about the only other guy that's worth starting on the Atlanta Falcons.
Cordarrelle Patterson. And I don't know if a lot of you guys know this because it has not been talked about. I know I got told by Tyler that he didn't know this, actually. He's listed as a running back on some fantasy platforms. That makes him even more valuable than he already was listed as a wide receiver. Cordarrelle Patterson, I like starting even more than Mike Davis. I would have Mike Davis as a borderline flex. Cordarrelle Patterson's in my lineup at this point. I just think from the usage, especially in a PPR or a half PPR with him getting catches, has to be in your lineup as of now with how the running back market is.
What if
I
he's
want to go
listed
back
as a
to
receiver?
Washington. Then he would be a borderline flex. I don't know. I still think.
Where's he
Sorry,
only
go.
listed as a receiver? Anyone know?
I know my fantasy, my dynasty league or my fantasy.
Oh,
league,
my fantasy leagues. So
yeah,
have him
he's listed as a
receiver.
wide receiver in there. He's listed as both on Yahoo, which makes him nice and valuable because you can kind of do different stuff with your lineup. And he's listed as a running back on NFL.com. That's all I know. I don't know where he's at on ESPN.
I think
but
he's
it's just
both on
amazing how this
ESPN and
different.
Sleeper. So
okay, there you go. So it's nice. It's kind of nice if he's listed as both because you can do a little extra stuff with your lineup if you wanted to. But I want to go back to Washington for half a second because I want to talk defense. Washington's defense so far is 30th in the league in fantasy points. I don't know. I think this is the matchup where you're going to see them come back out and play better. I think they can get a good amount of sacks against Atlanta. They can hold them points down enough because their offense hasn't been as good as I expected it to be. They got dropped down to, I think it's below 70% owned in NFL.com leagues. They're available in some places now, and they could be someone to jump in and start really well right away for you.
Yeah, solid defense of option right there. Another defense that had, was being drafted and then, was being dropped after, some big points given up week 1 against the Detroit Lions is the San Francisco 49ers. And they're the first of our 4:00 games. And I am vamping because I can't find my mouse on the screen to tell me who they're playing, but they're playing the Seattle Seahawks. And, well, they're actually hosting the Seattle Seahawks. Tyler Lockett did not practice on Thursday. He was actually downgraded to do not practice, so that's something to keep an eye on. He's been a fantasy darling to start the season. He's looked really well. I'm going to ask it every week. San Francisco 49ers backfield. Who are you playing Elijah Mitchell if he's healthy? Trey Sermon. You playing Kyle Juszczyk? I mean, he's a fullback, but the dude, he gets used. Are we just
the dude was almost used as the number 1 with everyone out last week. I think he got more touches than Sherman.
Yeah, it's a tough question, like how to handle that, fantasy backfield. I'll say it again though. If you have an IR spot, go pick up Jeff Wilson. Kyle Shanahan likes Jeff Wilson. He's still on PUP. He won't be back for a few more weeks. But go pick him up now. Stash him. I know I did in our league of record. I know we did it in our friends and family league. Well, I didn't do it. Tyler did it in that league. So definitely go out and do that with Jeff Wilson. Solid advice there. But let's just, hypothetical, Tyler Lockett doesn't play. Gerald Everett just hit the COVID list. That leaves only DK Metcalf as, the top passing option. Are you willing to flex another guy from that Seattle offense? Because, you expect them to put up some points.
I believe the name's Freddie Swain. I think that's the right. I know there's been a couple of Swains. I think it's Freddie. He's the guy that has been jumping in as the number 3 in Seattle, and he actually had a decent amount of targets even with Lockett and Metcalf playing. He could be a flex starter if you don't have Lockett and you don't have Everett.
Yeah, another solid guy for daily fantasy too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Freddie Swain is definitely a guy worth looking at, but the guy that I really like, and it's going to be why are we even talking about him? Because one, he might not play, and he hasn't played yet to this point, but it's Dwayne Eskridge, the rookie. This kid could be electric. He could be the guy to step in and really put up some good points. Maybe not right away, maybe later in the season, especially if there is an injury, but he has had a concussion. It is time. We're just kind of waiting until he can come back. He has been limited here and there. I'm just waiting for Dwayne Eskridge to finally come back. I don't think he's going to play this week, but he is a guy that in a dynasty league, I am stealing, I am stashing, and I am just waiting for him to play because he has the size and speed to really make a difference. And he's the guy I like more than Freddie Swain once he finally does play.
Hold on, let me go to my dynasty roster and promote Dwayne Eskridge.
I stole him in one league, so you're lucky I didn't steal him in the other. If Cody wouldn't have left Quintez Cephas available on the taxi squad, I would have stolen Eskridge instead, but instead I'm living here with Cephas.
There you go. Okay, that's good. So,
yeah. No, I love Quintez Cephas. He's one of my favorites. And guys, that's a good point. Let me just tie this back. I will find the footage if I have to, but in the preseason, we were talking about which Lions receiver was going to score the most. Cody said Brashad Perryman. I said Quintez Cephas. And George, who did you even say? I don't even remember at this point.
Tyrell Williams.
Oh, great. Awesome. Tyrell Williams. Well, this is a $1 bet. So if you guys want to give me the dollar now, you can, Cody especially, because, Brashad Perryman's not even on the team anymore. But whenever you guys want to send me that dollar, that'd be great. Season's not over. We can wait and see if anything crazy happens. But I think I won that one.
They're still paying. I know Perryman is, I think, on the Bears now. We did make this bet before the draft, which was probably dumb. I'm pretty sure we can find the footage. I didn't even want to make this bet, and I got peer pressured into it. So kids, don't fall into peer pressure, even if it is just $1. But they had just signed him to $2 million guaranteed. So I was like, okay, maybe it makes sense, and they cut him. So, George, I can't read whatever you're holding up in front of your screen.
It's $1.
Oh,
it was $1. It looked like an index card.
It was an index card with $1 written on it.
Gotcha. We're getting off the rails here. We probably should.
Great dad one day.
Absolutely. But, we got a few more games to wrap up here, and we're getting a little long. So let's move on to another big matchup for the Los Angeles Rams. They have the Arizona Cardinals this week. We still don't have any updates on Darrell Henderson. They're hoping to get him back this week. But that hasn't been official, so keep an eye out. We'll keep you posted on his status. There's been a lot of talk, though, about the Arizona Cardinals wide receivers. We had Rondale Moore last week, Christian Kirk after week 1, and I feel like the big name everybody was talking about was A.J. Green is back after week 3. DeAndre Hopkins is dealing a little bit with some injuries. Which Arizona Cardinal wide receiver are you guys most confident in playing, or are you not playing any of them outside of DeAndre Hopkins?
I feel like George is going to say Christian Kirk, so I'm going to go ahead and steal his thunder right there. But I'm going Rondale Moore. I still like what he can do. I still like the way they utilize him. It's funny to me that George is all team Kirk, but he's also team Cordarrelle Patterson, who is a guy who just gets used in every way possible. Which that's exactly what Rondale Moore is. He's used on the ground. He's used in the air. He's used in the short game. He's used in the deep ball. Like, even if he's not putting up the biggest numbers every week, he's getting used, and they want to get him the ball. And that is enough for me to say, if I'm going to have to go with a Cardinals receiver other than D-Hop, I'm going Rondale Moore.
I mean, I like Rondale Moore this week as well. I was, banging the table for you to get him last week too, and he did have a dud. I don't think that's going to keep up. I just feel like because they've had a rapport longer, because even though you said AJ Green broke out last week, Christian Kirk still did better than Rondale Moore. Christian Kirk's getting enough volume that if Hopkins is limited at all, I think Kirk is going to have a solid week, regardless of what Rondale Moore does.
Solid points there. And then on the other side, Rams, Deshaun Jackson had his big game. Van Jefferson has looked good. Are any of them up to your starting lineups yet? What are your thoughts on those two guys?
No.
No, but Bobby Trees.
Go trade for him.
Go trade for Bobby Trees? You're saying he's going to rebound, even though they are now getting Van Jefferson and Deshaun Jackson involved as well.
No, I was asking you go trade for him. Like, I thought that's where you were going.
Oh.
So apparently you're not. You think he's done?
I'm not. I don't think he's done, but there's just so much volume for me to start him consistently week to week because all of a sudden this became Cooper Kupp's offense, which is something I've hoped for years and gave up on, and now it happens.
Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
He's my favorite.
I wouldn't be surprised, though, with this Rams offense if, like, the second half of the season's, like, all Robert Woods, and, like, we're like, what happened to Cooper Kupp? I just feel like that's the type of team they are. But we should probably move on to a matchup that I was originally supposed to be at this game, but because of travel prices and ticket prices, I ended up canceling these plans. But the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to the Green Bay Packers, and, man, are the Steelers banged up. They get Deontay Johnson back to full participant on Thursday, but they had to chase Claypool. And then Juju Smith-Schuster is still dealing with some injuries. Big Ben, he practiced. He has a pectoral injury. This offense looks awful. Like, I'll let you all debate which wide receiver to start, but the one guy I would start from the Pittsburgh Steelers is Najee Harris. The dude is just getting so much volume. You know, we talk about Derrick Henry and all his volume. He had some outrageous number, 19 targets in week 3 for a running back. 19 targets for Najee Harris in week 3. Yeah, I would roll with Najee Harris out there. I know he doesn't have his yards per carry aren't very good, but out of the volume, he's a guy you got to keep rolling out in your starting lineups.
Yeah, honestly, if I had to start a Pittsburgh receiver, I'm going Chase Claypool. I like the volume he got last week. I still think that despite the way the usage has been, even with all 3 guys healthy, I will still go to bat to say that Chase Claypool is the most talented of their receivers. And I honestly believe that. And I really do think that he might still be going through some young guy struggles, but I think he's going to step it up. I think him and Ben are going to get more of a connection, but at the same time, I don't love the receivers right now because of the fact that Big Ben looks terrible. I mean, there were some passes last week that were like, honestly, I've seen George make better throws, and that's saying a lot. But like, he was throwing the ball directly to guys on the other team that were standing right in front of him. It's just, Ben, what are you doing? I mean, you're not this bad. I don't know what's going on. And honestly, they can't afford to struggle like this. I could definitely see them losing this week. I could definitely see them falling behind. And this is one of the 3 hardest divisions in the NFL right now. I mean, you got the AFC North, which everybody looks like they could win it. You got the AFC West, which everybody looks like they can win it. And you got the NFC West. Between those 3 divisions, you cannot afford to lose games and fall behind because you could be out just like that. So look for them to push the issue a little bit more. And I could definitely see them really try to go to the pass game early and try to get up big points early to try to make a splash, which is why I like Claypool this week.
But that doesn't get me off the Najee Harris train. Like Cody said, he's getting involved in the pass game too. So don't let that shy you away. And we'll keep you guys updated on the Claypool injury as well. If he doesn't play and it's just Deontay Johnson, I feel like he has to be the go-to. But staying in that division, since you talked about it, let's go to the Baltimore Ravens at the Denver Broncos. Big thing is Lamar Jackson is still not practicing. He is still expected to play. I believe it's either a back or a hip injury from that flip into the end zone last week, if I have heard correctly.
It's his back. I know a lot of people are correlating it to that. That was last week and he wasn't practicing, but he ended up being sick. His back is just tightening up is the report or what Greg Roman said during his. So hopefully they're just trying to keep him loose in practice, get him ready for game day. It's going to be this is another intriguing matchup. I feel like the Denver Broncos, we gave the Steelers, or when I say we, George especially gave the Steelers a bunch of crap last year for playing like the easiest 11-0 start ever. And the Denver Broncos are, they haven't really played anybody. Yeah, they've looked good. Their defense has been dominant in the games they have been. I'm not trying to take away anything that they have accomplished. Teddy Bridgewater has surprised me a lot more than I expected. The Baltimore Ravens, they looked good against the Chiefs, but struggled against the Raiders, who now look good, and the Lions last week. This is a big test for the Denver Broncos. If they beat the Ravens, they're going to prove to the AFC that they are legit, and the Ravens are going to need Lamar Jackson at full health. But speaking of the Ravens, Tyson Williams. I was so high on Tyson Williams last week, And maybe it's just, because I was so high on him, now I'm like scared of him. But I'm benching Tyson Williams this week. Latavius Murray, Devontae Freeman, they're both eating into his carries. He's still the lead back, but they are starting to eat into his carries. The Denver, like I mentioned, Von Miller just won AFC Player of the Month. Like, they look good. Their front is scary. Their offensive line is a little banged up. The running back for the Ravens might have another struggling day out in Denver.
Person I'm worried about the most on the Ravens is Hollywood Brown. And that's mostly because first-round pick Rashad Bateman came off of the PUP list injured reserve, and is expected to start playing this week. It may be a gradual incline, but Hollywood Brown's going to end up, I think, being the deep threat, the inconsistent guy. And if anyone's going to be a consistent pass catcher, I think it's going to be Bateman.
Guys, honestly, I'm actually interested in this game a lot because it's a true test for both teams. You got Lamar against a real defense, so you get to see what he actually can do, because the biggest hit on him is that he can't throw when the pressure's on, and against a hard defense like this, he's going to have to make really accurate throws. And on the Broncos side, you got their opponents they face have a combined record of 0-9. We've heard it. They also have one of the best point differentials in the entire NFL right now. But that doesn't matter. So now they get to play off against an actual playoff caliber team and get to see what they do. And these kinds of situations make me interested because, like I said with the previous matchups, if you're falling behind or if you are trying to prove something, you might not just go out there and play your normal style of game. You might go out there and start pulling tricks out of your book and pulling off crazy plays, or really trying to air it out, really trying to go with something you haven't done before to just prove to the world that you are a legit team or you are tough. So we might see Lamar throwing a lot. We might see the Broncos throwing a lot. But KJ Hamler's down. We know Jerry Jeudy's still out. So I was honestly disappointed with Cortland Sutton last week. I thought he was finally going to get some volume. But guys, Tim Patrick is looking more and more consistent in fantasy. Now, I understand Tim Patrick's not going to put up the groundbreaking numbers that you like to see that can win you your game. I get that. But we have all been in fantasy matchups so far where we have had a receiver that only puts up 2 points, or a receiver that puts up 1 point, 3 points, and you lose because that guy wasn't consistent that week. Tim Patrick is consistently putting up around 10 points, just over 10 points every single week. If you need a receiver that you can trust, start Tim Patrick.
Great advice. Stole it right from me. But I'm okay that you did that because people probably get sick of hearing me. And you know what else people are going to get sick of? They're going to get sick about hearing about how this is Tom Brady's return to New England. I'm already tired of it. I did enjoy the Adele promo Sunday night played. That made me laugh during the Sunday night game. But outside of that, I've had enough. Like, I don't even really want to watch this game. Like, I feel like it's a game like the announcers, they're going to be all over it. There's so much hype. I think I saw, like, it was either the Good Morning America or the Today Show. They're, like, going live from Gillette Stadium for their news. Like, I was like, guys, can we calm down? Like, it's a football game in week 4. I understand, it's a big deal. Tom Brady is coming back, but New England's offense has not been good. They've at all. They did just lose James White for most likely the season. I know that's still being evaluated, but that's the fear, is that it's for the season. Damian Harris against this Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense, not this week. I guess, if you're going to take a deep shot or, a DFS, we've been talking a lot of DFS today, Ramondre Stevenson, or is it JT or JJ? JT Taylor. He's
JJ
like the pass catching guy that's going to fill in for James White. Those are some guys I might consider because they're probably going to be down if you need like a really cheap option. But the Jonnu Smith, I'm out on him. There's not really any Patriots offensive player I'm starting this week. And then the guys on Tampa Bay you're playing. If they're a pass catcher, you're playing them. If they're a running back, you're probably not.
It is JJ Taylor, just to confirm, just in case any of you guys are looking in daily fantasy. I like Ramondre Stevenson better, but maybe not a bad move. And I'm with you, Cody. There's not much else to say other than start all your pass catchers on Tampa Bay. And I believe Gronk is going to play on top of that. That's another thing to note.
And it'll be good to have him for sure because, I mean, he's been one of the best tight ends in the league, and we all know how hard it is to find tight ends. But you know what, Cody? I completely agree with you. The media already talks about Tom Brady way too much. You cannot watch a Bucs game without it being Tom Brady, Tom Brady, Tom Brady. This is just going to be so much worse. I'm not looking forward to this game at all.
I hope the Patriots
You're looking
win.
forward.
And I've never rooted for the Patriots in my life. Like, could you imagine, like, Monday morning, if the Patriots beat Tom Brady?
Guys, I have some breaking news for you.
Ooh.
We, as the fans may know, we record this game, or record this podcast on Thursday night, and there was a big injury that just happened on the Thursday night game. DJ Chark got rolled up on. It looks like he could have broken his leg, and he was carted off the field. So DJ Chark, that's a huge hit to the Jags offense and a fantasy wide receiver that I started in a league, so that's definitely disappointing. But guys, we'll have more updates on that with our next podcast. But yeah, just wanted to throw that out there. DJ Chark carted off the field. Not good.
I mean,
maybe if your league doesn't have waivers, go pick up Laviska Shenault. Because some leagues out there don't have waivers.
Actually,
I don't understand it. How you don't have waivers or fab, and I can go pick up a guy that's already playing. We'll save that for an offseason when we need to talk about pet peeves again, because that's going to be one of them. We got one more game. It's the Monday night game. Las Vegas Raiders versus the Los Angeles Chargers. Got both their names correct. George, your Chargers, they're looking good. Mike Williams in your starting lineups.
I actually, okay. I almost think I might like Mike Williams long term more than Keenan Allen. That's crazy. I know. I ended up in a league where I have both. I know. Just go ahead and jaw off about it while I keep talking. And I'm trying to trade Keenan Allen
league too. Just saying.
Go ahead. Yeah, just accident, honestly, with Eckler and Keenan Allen. Mike Williams was an ad, I believe. But I don't know. We haven't seen Mike Williams put together his full repertoire, and he has now, and he's getting more targets than Keenan Allen.
No, he's not.
I am sold. He's not.
No, Keenan Allen has 2 more targets than Mike Williams.
2 targets difference in 3 weeks. So it's pretty much right there. But
it's right there. I'm just letting you know.
Yeah, I still think that Mike Williams is just as good or slightly better of a long-term option than Keenan Allen now. The only thing that scares me is his injuries, but we're not going to play for injuries because that's just not a good way to play fantasy. I don't think there's anyone that really shocks you. You might want to play Jared Cook this week if you're doing a tight end dart throw. Everyone else is normal.
I don't like Jared Cook in fantasy, but again, you're out of tight ends. You know, I have a dartboard in my house. I might just go throw some tight ends up on the dartboard and Cody's face in the middle and just throw some darts at the board and see who I hit and just start them in a daily fantasy lineup.
You could start Cody in a daily fantasy lineup and do better than some tight ends.
I will definitely start Cody in a lineup. Cody's a great tight end in pickup football. I'm just saying.
True that.
Yeah. I can
Especially if George is covering him. He likes to catch the ball and then throw it down.
I only have to run on third down.
Gets up in your face and just stares you down. It's super aggressive, Cody, and I love every second of it.
Yeah, I think eventually, if we get enough people to like and share this podcast, I think we should organize a Couch GMs pickup football game. I think that'd be a ton of fun.
Well, I mean, it might be a little while for me, but I'm definitely interested. I have a partially torn ACL and a torn meniscus right now from playing pickup football, so it might be a little bit until I'm able to play. But I can play quarterback. I don't need to run for that.
You know who can run? Henry Ruggs.
Wow.
Oh, we're going back to actual football here.
Look at these segues, guys.
I thought I would try to bring us back on track here. Cody's probably going to try to throw up a Hunter Renfrow. You should start him instead. I'm saying you start Henry Ruggs this week unless you have like 3 solid wide receivers.
Do you know Cody at all? He's a Bryan Edwards fan, not a Hunter Renfrow fan.
Yeah, I do actually like Bryan Edwards a lot. I don't think he hasn't quite broken out yet into why he should be, considered, but he's always making big catches and big moments for that team. There's something about like the Raiders, they have looked great. There's just something about them. Like I don't trust anyone but Darren Waller, like on that team. Like Derek Carr's look good. I have a hard time trusting him. Josh Jacobs, if he's healthy, I'm excluding his injury. I still don't really trust Josh Jacobs. He seems to be inconsistent. Henry Ruggs looks good some games. He's getting a lot more targets. He's more than just a deep shot. I'll give you that. Hunter Renfrow. He's a guy in the end zone. Derek Carr the red zone. Derek Carr loves him. Just don't trust him. The Raiders are the hardest team for me right now to trust any skill position player about the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I have a hard time, suggesting start any of them. But I guess this week it's, we expect it to be another high scoring matchup. I feel like we've been saying that for the Chargers for 3 weeks, and they've kept all the games close and haven't put up that many points. We expect a high scoring affair. So I would imagine Henry Ruggs gets involved, but like I said, it's just hard for me to trust the Oakland Raiders, Las Vegas Raiders.
You were so close. You were doing so well for
so close.
But that's the thing about the Raiders. Like I agree with you. They're one of the hardest teams to trust. But you said one of the only people I trust is Darren Waller and maybe Josh Jacobs. But last week they didn't have Josh Jacobs, and Darren Waller really didn't do all that much. And even though the Dolphins are a crappy team and they had to go to overtime to beat them, the Dolphins do have a great defense. Like that is what they're known for. So even against a good defense, without using two of their biggest pieces, they still put up 31 points. Like honestly, the Raiders might not be a real team. We're gonna have to wait and see. They might get the same talk as we had with the Steelers last year, but right now they're airing the ball out. They're running the ball on the ground well, and they are putting up points. Like these guys, you have to watch them. One guy goes down, be ready to pick up the next guy because the Raiders are finding ways to score.
And that's why I believe Jacobs will probably be back, but definitely keep Peyton Barber on your radar because if Jacobs is out, Barber has been solid.
Absolutely. And the Raiders are the number one scoring offense. Granted, they have played 2 overtime periods in 3 weeks, so those stats numbers are a little bit screwed. But we have talked way too long about the Week 4 matchups. There's quite a few good ones. But as always, thanks again for listening to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast.
Absolutely, guys. And you're probably getting tired of hearing this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Look, you need to get involved with the podcast. Talk some trash. Talk about how George is horrible with his segues and I am so much better. That's fine. Say how, Cody is the only one that has a cool setup for a podcast. I mean, we can talk about that too. Feel free to talk some trash there. Or just, give us some feedback. Maybe you like what we said. Maybe you're curious about, should I start this guy? Should I start that guy? Should I make a trade here? Or would you stick with what I have? Whatever you got to do, reach out to us, get involved, because this podcast is a lot more fun for you and way more fun for us when you get involved.
And thank you one more time for listening in to the Couch GMs podcast. For Tyler Snyder and Cody Roadcap, I'm George Kerth, and we'll see you next week.
Boom.